Welcome. As Louisa said, we're really focused on getting you all together to be around the campfire to solve some of the most incredibly crazy problems that we've ever seen. And we thought there would be nothing better than bringing you all here to really talk about this, share some wine, share some food, share stories. As Louisa said, we invite you all to lean in, ask questions, make some new connections, some new friends. We will try to give you as many network connections and answer as many questions as we can. And I'm super excited about the panel that we've got coming up as well. But before I sort of get into the panel, what I wanted to really talk about was where we're at now. What's actually happening in the world. And we're in the midst of a once-in-a-generation change. There is never and will never, ever be a time in our careers or in our life where work is transforming like it is today. And that's not exaggeration, just to be clear. This is never going to happen at this pace ever again, once in a generation. And we are the people that are going to be responsible for ushering in this new world. And the question that we were always asking ourselves as a team and with our customers and folks we talk to is, are we ready? Are you all ready? And what we want to do is create a space where we can all get ready together and share and learn and feel and experiment and really go on this journey together and share this brains trust with each other, whether it's in Sydney, whether it's in Hong Kong, whether it's in Chicago, London. We're bringing these spaces together to really bring that community together and go on this movement together. Now, one of the things that's really important to me is, my background was workforce strategy. So I spent, unfortunately, most of my career on one side of the business hiring people, while firing on the other side. It was my constant, everyday problem. And what that did was it created this passion, this obsession around creating what we call zero wasted potential. And this is a movement we believe will help every single person have access to meaningful work, no matter what your background. Zero wasted potential in business. So at the end of the day, we are companies that have to make money and we all have a shareholder responsibility. So as much as we want to do lovely, exciting programs, we got to make money first. So how do we make sure that we're creating zero waste in our business? And there is a way to do that which makes sure that you've got people having access to meaningful work at the same time. And then finally, especially now, the changes that are happening in our workforces today with AI coming in, with sort of the hiring and the firing and the cycles of the recessions and the markets going up and down, we're going to create a skills crisis that we've never seen before if we don't take action today. And I invite you all to, when you're thinking about designing your workforces, working alongside your leadership teams, to really think about zero wasted potential in your people, in your business, but also what is that recurring impact that you are going to create into society today? Because it's not just about your employees, it's that ripple effect that you will create broadly, whether it's, into their family, into the community, or even they're your customers, right? So it's really important that we start to think about zero wasted potential. One of the things that we did before tonight was we ran reviews of basically every one of your earnings calls. As much as the public data we could find, we wanted to have a look at what your CEOs are telling the markets today, whether it's in your board report, shareholders report. I encourage folks who don't do this, that it's really good reading, that if you want to sort of find out what's happening, and as you can see, automation, innovation, efficiency. I don't think any of this will be a surprise to anyone in this room, especially in Australia, that there is a lot of conversation that's happening right now around what is AI, what is the places that I can implement it, what does it look like, what will the impacts be, how do we go faster, how do we stop spending as much money, how do we do more with less, how do we create velocity to customer? These are all the things that we're hearing today, and I think this really feeds into what I'm going to talk you through about when we're starting to think about that. Now, this new world, when we think about it, we don't want you to think that taking on AI, you have to be all safe. Yes, you have to be safe from a privacy and security, but in order to do anything meaningful in your workforce, we're going to have a new mindset. And it's one that we believe is really bold. You want to think bold, think about how do we reinvent our workforce and do this differently, while at the same time being responsible. So your CEOs, your shareholders, everyone is thinking about AI. This is happening, and it's how do we become the enablers of this transformation. So we want you to be really bold and reinvent your workforce, to think about workers in a completely different way, to think about how you design your workforce in a world where AI is happening, where AI is a worker. And I think that becomes a really different way of thinking about your workforce strategy, and the programs and the systems and the operating models we've got in place today are simply not going to work. And right at the middle of the zero waste to potential is how do we make sure that you're really bold, but at the same time really responsible, remembering that while everyone's going on this journey to adopt AI, that we are right beside them saying, okay, well, if you're adopting AI in these areas, we want to know where the impacts are so that we can make sure that we reskill them or pivot them into other meaningful work. And this happening at the same time is really what we describe this bold and responsible movement is all about. Now, there's a few key things that are standing in the way of this new way of working. The biggest learning that I went through over the last 18 months when I was designing my workforce was when I started looking at my workforce and where AI potential was, I was looking at skills. And people have skills, but the actual work themselves do not have skills. And if you're thinking about adopting AI, you actually need to have full view of all of the work that's happening in your company. So HR don't own work, it sits in the business. We are labeling work because we're trying to make sense of what's happening in the business, but the two languages are not making sense. So if we're starting to think about, this new world of work, you have to have a common language of work that makes sense not only to us as HR, but also into the business. What is actually happening within our workforce? Obviously, you need to then get visibility into who your people are and how busy they are. So it's really important so that we understand when we think about efficiency. We need to have an understanding of where AI will impact. A lot of folks over the years have been sending folks on reskilling pathways based on the jobs that they were told were the jobs, but actually they're not the jobs anymore. So really smart people have been reskilling folks in the wrong way because they didn't understand where the AI will impact their workforce specifically. The future jobs aren't created until you change some of your current jobs because those new jobs will evolve into other things. And this is really important that if you're looking at this type of work, you need to understand where AI has the most potential within your workforce and whether it's worth it or not to even thinking about adopting it. Obviously, our workforces are super siloed. There is not a freedom of movement. There's no ability to move workers around easily. Whether you're a small company like mine or a big company, it's actually quite challenging to be able to move work to worker. So how do we create new systems within our organization and ways of working? So this is one of the things from a change perspective that we have to work really hard at from the business leaders to how do we share talent between, in my work before, we were firing people that were on the bench, but we were hiring the exact same people in the other division, and it just didn't make sense. So how do we remove those barriers? And I think that becomes really important, along with the same thing around the mindsets. That culture hoarding, AI is not coming, AI is here. We need to remove these legacy mindsets so that we can embrace this new world. And then finally, the pathways. If we need to think about reskilling people, we need to first understand that impact. Where is actually the impact to my workforce? Whether that is I'm adopting AI, I'm moving my business around, whether I'm looking at generative AI, robotics, it does not matter. We need to understand what is the pathways for our folks in good times or in bad. And that could be to pivot folks, or it could be to create a culture of opportunity in the workforce as well. The one thing that probably, out of this whole journey with Reejig, that I have probably had the moment of oh God, I think I've got this wrong, was when we started down the journey of skills. We were all talking about skills-based workforces, and when I started analyzing my jobs to think about AI adoption, and I looked at the skills, and it didn't work. And it really dawned on me that there's a lot more to work than what I've probably realized. And it was only when we started to dig into it, and if you think about it, jobs have tasks. AI automates tasks, not skills. Tasks need skills. And then people have skills. So really, that sounds so simple, but at the time when we were building and we were all going through these transformations, that we were looking at job titles and they had skills. But actually, the jobs have tasks and then you require the skills. And when you start to think about it like that, it really starts to completely change your whole mindset. And this is a really simplified model that I would use in a workforce now, that when we start to think about, when you're talking with your leaders or when you're thinking about how to solve this, you actually need to think about this. And for me, I'm saving 1.6 million a month in my workforce alone today, just by adopting this new mindset, which is crazy. So I think one of those things that when you start to go down the journey of trying to solve, whether it's for AI, whether it's for efficiency, whether it's for velocity to customer or career empowerment and giving folks access to opportunity, you really need to start thinking at that task level because that really does start to help unpick all of this. And then the other thing, and I think some folks think I'm a bit crazy when I say this, but there is a completely new workforce DNA. We no longer have people in jobs that, job holders that do jobs. We are going to have a workforce DNA that has your fixed employees, which is, your full-time folks who can do set scopes, or they can be agile within your own marketplace. You've got your flex workers. So these flex workers could be, I'll give you an example of my company. I outsource a lot of my finance. I have a team in Manila. I have a lot of bolted on marketing support. I've got, an incredible amount of flex and contingent workforce and retained workforce that sits on top of me and wraps around my employee base. And then I have digital workers. I think at Count, we have probably over 70 digital workers. And these are generative AI, automations, workers that have actually taken the tasks that some of my people were doing before. And when you start to think about all the experimentation that's likely happening with your workforce right now, lots of people are testing and experimenting AI. They're doing tasks. We need to know what that is, because we're going to hire people that are going to be brought in to do those tasks when you've got the technology and the CIO team operating and bringing in, actual AI that is a digital worker, essentially. So this becomes why this is our job. So for me, I think I've went into so many rooms where, McKinsey and others are all pushing it down at the CEO level and telling the people teams, this is how we have to build our workforce. I actually think it's our job to push it up and say that, if you're thinking about adopting AI, we need to actually first look at where is the highest impact areas to adopt it, rather than what we're seeing right now, which is companies spending millions of dollars and buying loads of tech, and no one actually knows what the tech's supposed to do. And then they're giving about 10 different access points to an employee, and then they wonder why no one adopts it. So I think this is our moment to really think about like a surgical approach to looking at where is the best place to adopt AI. And AI should be adopted, in my opinion, in two different ways. Where does it cost the most money? And are there people doing a whole pile of work that we could free up to do the most meaningful part of their job? So create them an awesome career, make more money. We save money, win, win, win. Then you also look at it from where it's causing the most pain. So where in your business, whether it's a customer pain, response rates, whether it's team pain. So when we think about that AI adoption, and think about it in those two respects. And when you start to do that, you create a roadmap. And that roadmap should be the roadmap that sits with the CEO so that it's lining directly to the business strategy. And like we were talking about today, it's like all of these strategies have to link back up to the strategy of the business, or it becomes a talent thing or a HR project that's like a fluffy, nice thing. And like, I'm done with that world in HR. Like, I'm sure everyone else here is too while you're in the room, right? It's that how do we directly solve the most critical problems of the organization, but we got to do it with fact and data, so it's not like a hunch. It's like, here, if you want to adopt AI, great, let's go. Let's go. Where is the best place to go? What's costing you the most money? You can't overwhelm our organization by adopting AI all over the place. Go first to the place that causes the most pain or costs the most money. And at the same time, we're going to loop in our head of learning and development, because they're going to parachute right in beside this project, and they're going to look at where is the impacts to people, and we're going to find the paths of where we can put them next. And that is where the dream will happen, when we get to be really bold and responsible at the same time with this new strategy. When we started to rethink our whole approach on this, we had originally like a skills cloud, like everyone else had this one big skills cloud. We chucked that in the bin. We put it in the bin because we thought, you know what, it's actually not solving the problem. And what we actually need to do is create what we call a work ontology. And every organization should have a work ontology. It's where you understand every single one of your jobs, every single one of the tasks that are done within your jobs, what are the skills required to do those jobs. And if you're great and lucky and you've got some access to availability and utilization and time, and you know how busy people are, whether it's like in the Woolies context of rostering or whether it's professional services from a utilization perspective, the secret sauce of a workforce will be understanding tasks, skills required, time. It's like a modern job architecture, but on steroids, when you think about it, because the job architectures that we are looking at today are going to get out of date really quickly. So your organization needs to be able to have this data that's kind of feeding in and out of your workforce, in and out of any of your systems. It's not like a separate thing. It should be like powering all of the decisions. And this is where we really believe that the new world and the new world of work needs a work ontology. Some of the metrics that we're talking with CEOs, with CPOs right now on are, when they're looking at solving the problem, some of the stuff that they're talking about is, well, where is the AI potential of my workforce? So when we think about this, we talk about AI potential index. So this is when you've looked at all of your work, you understand your tasks, you understand the AI potential, we can actually tell you an AI potential of your workforce for each job, rolled up in department. And this information is really important because this is kind of like that North Star for where we know you're going to go. And it's just how long is it going to take you to get there? Whether or not you do it or not, it's completely up to you, but at least you have that information. And this is gold dust from a shareholder's perspective, a CEO perspective. The CFO loves this. So if you want to make friends with the CFO, you talk about the AI potential index, the operational efficiency index. So one of the other things when I did my own team review was we looked at the tasks. And in a company of 100 people, plus let's say 50 flex workers, the amount of task duplication that I had in my company was crazy. So imagine in your workforces, the amount of people that are working on the same work and no one actually knows. And imagine if you were to be able to identify that, and even if you were to pull out 1 to 2% of that across every team, imagine how much unlock. Whether you care about it from a money perspective or you care about it from a velocity perspective, speed up to go faster to our customers, whether it's to speed up and help your patients, this is really where if we could look at where is that area of redesigning and reinventing the work, this again brings us into a completely different conversation at the business, where we're looking at it from a business perspective, but also that our customer, our product, whatever it is that we are servicing, how do we do better at that? How do we make that faster, save more money, and at the same time unlock opportunity for everyone? The other sort of thing that I've been talking about with folks as well is, sometimes there's no point in bringing in AI. Like everyone talks about, like the recent one was, well, we can just automate out the receptionists. And I'm like, really? Like, it's just like, come on. Like, you're paying $300K a year for someone whose 68% of their job is automated, And it's like, this is where we need to lift the conversation up, Like, rather than going after the things that people just see and go, oh, well, we can just offshore that, or we can just, look at that. Let's actually go after really decently looking at the data. If you've got accountants that are getting paid, $200K a year, and 67% of that has high automation potential, that's like incredibly important information that we would all want to know, right? And it's not because we want to take that accountant out. It's how many more tax reports or how many more things can that accountant look after while all of that work is getting done? So it's how do we think about that velocity and that speed and doing more with pretty much less at the moment, which is exactly the culture that we're all getting asked to build right now, is like that efficiency mode. The other thing I would say that, when you go down the road of being really bold, there will be impacts. So if you are thinking about, full automation, looking at parts of your business, there are parts of your workforce that will be impacted. I'm talking to a lot of customers in the US right now, and it's pretty scary compared to Australia. They're doing full digital factories. So think about going into a factory and 80% of that workforce will be robots in 2 years. Household brands, we all know them. That's what's happening. And it's not like maybe happening, it is a right now happening. And what actually is going to happen, it'll come to Australia soon. You'll start to see that happening pretty soon as well. And that's where the society and the impact part comes in. Like us as leaders, we have an opportunity right now to change the outcome of that. What if we were alongside in that conversation, looking at, where is the most AI potential and that impact, but how do we make sure that those folks have access to meaningful work? And whether that is to pivot them, whether that's to reskill them, whether that's to help them exit safely, whatever the outcome, it's how do we start to think about giving them access to meaningful work and us being in charge of that conversation. Because if not, what will happen is if every company starts to go on this journey at the same time, you're going to have a skills crisis like we have never seen before. And the conversations are pretty scary in the US for me right now. Like it's pretty intense because everyone is under the same pressure. Make more money, and everyone's running towards AI as the solution for this. So how do we become the pioneers, the sort of change agents that are really like not slowing that down? What is this world? What is the opportunity that we have as a business? But how do I be a good leader? And what I would recommend is, share as much as possible today and what you've tried, what you're thinking about doing, because there's an opportunity for us all to upskill together. I am an HR person who's had to upskill in AI pretty quick. The customers that we're working with, none of them are AI background. I think there's one AI person in this room and the rest are on the HR side, right? And I think that's really important for us all as leaders here to even upskill ourselves so that when we're having these conversations that we're making sure that we're able to hold our own and have that conversation about, why we can't do this without thinking about the bold and responsible strategy at the same time. Now, we wanted you to come here. We wanted you to start on this journey of having these conversations, but we also wanted to kind of give you something to help sort of start the topic internally. Each one of you have been gifted an insights report. And in that insights report within your pack, it's a specific industry report about the AI potential index of your organization and also the reskilling pathways of your organization. Now, this data is based on your company. We've analyzed from the external data that we have. It's not going to be perfect, because it's not your data, but it's based on the external data that we can see on you. It's probably more than you have on yourself, the data that I have on you, which sounds probably scary. But the purpose of that is to really help you to start educating yourself first. And then when you start to hear these conversations within your workforce, that you can start to have that topic. And if you need to talk to any of my team, there's folks all around, or you can give them a call and they can walk you through it and kind of explain what it means. But what the point of that is we want you to first start educating yourself, have data to help you make good and fair decisions. The second thing is we need you all to be the change agent. This is not like a rally call for something exciting. This is mission critical for the world. And I know I sound really drama when I say this, but the stuff that I'm seeing now in terms of how our workforce is changing, this is important. Whether you sit within the financial services, healthcare, technology, professional services, this is happening everywhere. And we need leaders like you who are going to stand up and take ownership for how do we drive this new world where we're being really bold but really, really responsible at the same time. And finally, just committing to leaving no one behind. How can we all use all of our brains together to solve, some of these problems? One of the projects that we're doing right now in Africa, which we haven't publicly announced right now, is, MTN is one of the largest companies in Africa, and they're really obsessed with how do we make sure we take folks out of poverty and use our product to really help reskill them. And we've just launched to 1 million people in Nigeria to help them find meaningful work. And I think, how do we do that in Australia? How do we activate with our communities? You own the biggest organizations and the biggest workforces within this country. How do we think about reskilling as a country rather than as individual companies as well? And I just think that with the folks that are in this room, anything is possible. So I invite you all to really join us on this movement. This is not our thing. This is just a thing that we're bringing together to bring the best minds in the country together. And thank you for being here, and thank you for all of the wisdom that will be shared tonight. I'm very excited to hear the questions. And the last thing I will say is, seriously, don't waste this moment. This is the best career moment for all of us right now. Solving all the critical problems is one thing, but this is career-defining stuff from a HR perspective. It is incredible, exciting opportunity for you also to really carve out something completely different in your career and change the world at the same time. So thank you for all being here. Sarah, I think I'm handing back over to you to lead us through the incredible conversations that we're having. But thank you, folks.